Well, I'm here today with Alejandro, and I knew I was going to mess up your name. I knew it right off the bat.
Just call me Ali. That's the reason why everybody calls me Ali.
So I'm here with Ali, known each other for a while. And so we're really excited about being able to talk to you this evening amidst all the things that's going on around this nation. And for those of you who don't know, he's a solid, big-time football player out of Army West Point, and is currently playing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, all-pro offensive tackle. And when I say big guy, 6'9", 320 pounds, so that's pretty large. And correct me if I'm wrong, this 2020 season is your sixth in the NFL, all with the Steelers, although originally I think you signed as an undrafted rookie free agent in 2014, but you spent from 2014 to present day with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I've been ever since August of 2014, I believe. Okay,
great. Now, there your football career really took off. You became Pro Bowl status from 2017, 2018. So that's kind of the football side of the equation. But upon graduation from West Point, you spent 2010 to 2013 as an active member of the U.S. Army. You served 3 tours in Afghanistan. You were a captain in U.S. Army. You served as an Army Ranger as well in wartime and decorated with the Bronze Star for Valor. So let's kind of pick up there. And I'm talking more of a comparative, if you will, relative to today's corona pandemic that many have called the invisible enemy. You have been on both sides of that equation, meaning fighting the visible enemy and now the invisible enemy. Now, you and I talked a couple of days ago, and you spoke that your family's okay, your wife and your children are okay, but you indicated that there's a member of your family that has tested positive for the virus. Can you kind of share with the viewing audience who that person is, the circumstances surrounding how it occurred and the current status, and particularly along with how you're dealing with the challenge itself?
Yeah, for sure. So my dad was getting deployed to Somalia on a ship for 6 months. And this was right around when the coronavirus was really taking off, especially in Italy and Spain. And since it was a NATO mission, there was a lot of soldiers, sailors that were coming from South Korea,
okay,
from Italy and from other different nations. And I remember my dad being really nervous because he was going to be the commander of some sort of element in that mission, and he wanted everyone to get tested. And so, it was not part of the protocol. I know that the Navy has struggled, the U.S. Navy especially, with dealing with coronavirus on ships and whatnot. But he asked for the small party that was going with him to get tested in Djibouti, and he was the only one of the party that tested positive.
Wow.
So as soon as that happened, it became a pretty big pretty big thing on the news, especially in Spain. Ever since Spanish people bringing disease to other countries is not a very well received headline. So he had no symptoms whatsoever. They continued to test him, keep testing positive. So very grateful on that end. Nobody in my family has had any symptoms, and obviously they've been in contact with my dad. So yeah, it's just we talked about it. It's opinion. I think perception of reality is what truly matters in situations like this. Whether it's the Army, whether it's society, it's the perception that you have of what's going on, worldwide, with this new virus.
Wow. Well, our prayers go out to him as well as your entire family, and I hope that things turn around, obviously, sooner than later. I'm going to kind of move a little bit, though, to the football segment of our conversation, and I'm sure some Steelers fans are not aware that you didn't just play offensive tackle in college at Army West Point, but last 2 seasons, I believe, tight end and wide receiver. And you were very productive in those 2 roles. Do you ever miss playing those positions? And should we give a shout out to Coach Tomlin to make him aware that you have some other skills to add to the Steelers offense?
Well, I was a walk-on on the football program. I played overseas in Belgium. I played in a park. If there are any service members who have been to SHAPE, to the base, Supreme headquarters, Allied Powers, Europe, down in Mons, they'll tell you that it's not a 5A program from Texas. It's a very small, school, and they try to make it as comfortable as they can for the kids of servicemen and women who are stationed there. And so they happen to have a pretty cool league of sports. All 3 of them are, baseball, football, wrestling, and basketball. And for me, it was a European kid showing up to a school in Belgium that has all the similar traits to the American movies that I saw growing up. And so when I started playing football, I thought it was very fun. I played rugby before.
Okay.
Rugby is a pretty fun sport because everybody gets to touch the ball, everybody gets to advance the ball and has an opportunity to score. And when I played in high school, I played defensive end and tight end. Okay. But when I tried out for Army, I was so raw and I was so new to the sport, and I didn't really get a chance to play at a big time program. So I played my last 2 years of high school, and then when I went to Army, they put me at defensive end. I started for the scout team, defensive end for 2 years, until they switched me to offensive tackle for 2 more years. And then my last season, I played 1 season of wide receiver. I never played tight end. I think a lot of people always assume that I played tight end, but I never did. Okay. I just played straight wide out. And it was a very fun transition. I think, when football is so new to you, you don't really have a lot of the preconceived notions that, maybe football players get when they watch Friday Night Lights and they watch all these shows that kind of depict what football is supposed to be like. My coach doesn't like me, or I'm not getting the ball, or I didn't know any of those things. Trust me, if I played wide receiver for 4 more years, I would have been the biggest diva out there. That just comes with the position. But for me, it was very interesting to say, oh wow, I got to play a different position. I just, you do what you're told. When you play rugby, one day you're playing wing, the next day you're playing 8, flanker. You play whatever you can, you'll do whatever you can do to help the team win. And obviously, Army was not in a really good position back then, struggling to get wins. And the coach, Coach Ellerson came from a triple option system, and he didn't really see value in really tall tackles. I think really tall tackles were sort of a kind of a hindrance to try to veer and slip through the defensive line to try to get to the second level. So he thought that maybe I could, help as a red zone sort of target, right, if I had good hands. And so that transition was really fun. It's just as nervous. You start switching concepts from offensive line and put them into wide receiver. When you have to do a one-on-one with a really good edge rusher and it's third down, 3rd and 12, and the receiver's not really catching the ball, and you have maybe a rookie quarterback. That's a lot of pressure, and that you have to really focus and try to slow things down. When you play wide receiver, and you get in those situations where there's a favorable matchup, and you're one-on-one with the corner, and or it's a play action, and you're going to be wide open. Now you have to sort of focus in, just like you do as a tackle. Football is a very explosive and sort of technical sport. So whether it's hand usage, catching the ball, or hand usage, combating a man, it's very similar. So there wasn't that many differences. And I would say that it did help that I was very tall, and it did help that we were in the triple option. So we didn't rely heavily on my skills.
Wow. Now, speaking of tall, you happen to be one of the tallest players in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. You're 6'9". Is that about right?
6'9", 6'10", depending on who's using the measuring tape. Yeah.
Unbelievable. So Now, I'm going to shift the gears again. Now, unless you're Tom Brady, where, you may end up playing until you're 40 or 45 years or 50-year-old, NFL has obviously come to an end. And you're currently in your 6 years we talked about before. So 2 questions behind that statement. First, can you give us the Reader's Digest version of what it's like being able to play at such a high level of football against some of the greatest athletes in the world? And then second, how have you envisioned your life after football, meaning any professional or personal goals that you've established as you look away from playing professional football?
Well, my goal was never to play in the NFL. I never really had a goal or a dream to play in the NFL. My dream and goal was to, sort of come to the United States and be able to, have a life, live the American dream. I think it's a concept that doesn't really get brought up much for people that maybe take for granted what it's like to live in this country. But I grew up overseas. I had the U.S. nationality, after my dad was stationed in Meridian, Mississippi. So I'm from Mississippi. I was born there. And for me, it was just an incredible opportunity to go to the United States Military Academy and be able to learn leadership skills that would then make me a valuable asset to somebody in the outside world. Football was a very good means to an end. It was really good means to an end to be able to fit in American culture, especially at West Point. I didn't really know a lot of the, I had no friends. Nobody has a lot of friends. Showing up to West Point, it gives you a leg up to be able to belong to Army football, to wear the Army football gear, and to be part of that brotherhood. I think that after my time in the Army was done, after 5 years of service, I didn't really know what to do. I think a lot of people go to business school, and that's what I had in my mind. I said, what, I'm going to do 5 years, and then I'm going to try to get my MBA. The problem is that, since I went to West Point, and this is a little disclaimer, most people don't really think about this, but when you go to West Point, because of the GI Bill, you don't qualify for a free MBA after you get out, whereas a lot of ROTC programs do. So I couldn't pay for, I didn't have any money to pay for my MBA after my 5 years of service. And so I talked to Josh McNary, who was a teammate of mine, and he was playing with the Colts, and he sold it to me like somebody will sell somebody to be on American Idol. I was stationed in Savannah. He came down for St. Patrick's Day, and he was telling me, the typical things that you tell a peer, like, hey, once your name is in there, in the training camp, you're good. You just make it 1 year. And so when I saw the amount of money that an NFL rookie or first year, makes, then I saw that as sort of like a, if there's a 3% chance that I get to make it in the NFL, it's worth for me to pay all the fees to go to these combines and be able to, give it a shot to the NFL, because again, it's so much money, for an NFL athlete. So my goal was to get my MBA. That was the means to the end. Just like I use football to learn American culture, to perfect my accent, to have friends, and to be able to fit in. I use football to try to get an education, after the Army. So as soon as I, started playing for the Steelers, I applied all the programs that I wanted. And then it's when the love for football really, really hit me.
Really?
When I had to choose between, going, to California, or going to Chicago or New York to get an MBA, or play football. And since I had a chance to continue to play, and I thought that I had a really awesome fell after 1 year, and try to play a little longer. So I worked on my MBA as I was playing football. That was always the goal. And then once I got my MBA, and once I achieved financial security, through the NFL, then, the only thing that was left out of all this was the passion and the love that I developed for football. Wow. And all the good things that usually come out of it. So playing in the NFL, I don't think it's any different, to be honest, the way I look at it, as it is playing high school football. I don't think there's any difference than playing college football. It's a relationship that you have with the game that is very personal. It's the set of values that continue to dominate locker rooms, the toughness, the brotherhood, the passion. I think, those things are very personal, almost like a religious experience, and be part of the football community. So that's the only reason why, I play football now. And that's the only reason why I haven't really thought about anything other than football. And I think you talked about Tom Brady. He was one of the players that I loved the most growing up. And I think that I have his same attitude. I'm not going to really think about off the football until that passion and that love for the game is gone. And so far, it grows every year. The body's responding well. So hopefully I can play a few more years before I can answer that question.
There you go. It's interesting. This is a segue from your response to my next question. There are two Army players who, and now the 7th round of the NFL draft is probably over as you and I are talking right now. But there are two players on the current Army roster, Elijah Riley, cornerback, and middle linebacker Cole Christensen, both co-captains of the team in 2019. They probably, based on the time frame now, may not get drafted, but will probably sign as free agents, like yourself, actually. If you were to give them any advice at this stage of the game, what would you say to them?
I would say, personally, if you don't get drafted in the top 10 picks, it doesn't really matter, how you get to the NFL. It's meaningless. That's obviously from my experience. The top 10 salaries for the top 10 picks is already fixed. It's a lot of money.
Right.
But then after that, if you're a first rounder, then you have to deal with a 5th-year option, which is a little bit of a leverage point for the owners, when negotiating contracts with first rounders. Second rounders through 7th rounders, the contracts are not that different, and you're locked in on a 4-year deal. But anything under a 3rd round in the NFL is not really a safe spot in the roster. It's just that you're getting drafted. It means the team has more leverage than the player. Once you become, if you are an undrafted free agent, you have the ability to choose which teams you want to go to. So it's not as bad as a deal. I mean, obviously this interview is too late. If I could have told him about this a little earlier, maybe it would have been a little better. But basically, when you're an undrafted free agent, after the draft, you have the ability to choose which team you want to go to. So it's better to be an undrafted free agent, in my opinion, than it is to be a 7th round, 6th round, 5th round, even 4th round pick. Because a 4th round pick doesn't know which team he's going into. But if you're an undrafted free agent, you can say, you know what, I can beat these guys. They probably have a need at this position, and you can go in there. The tough thing, that is true is that if you come from a small school, or if you come from a school that doesn't have the reputation of being a factory for NFL talent, the perception is very stacked against you, and teams love to follow trends. They're sort of like the stock market, and they're just going to put money on companies that everybody's sort of raving about, and of
course,
and their names that keep popping up everywhere. So Army's football has been doing unbelievable. Since I left, they've been winning a lot of games. They've been competing against very good programs.
Absolutely.
And that's because of the players. Players win football games. They're out there executing it. So hopefully these kids get a chance. I'm sure that, if they do, they're going to do great. And hopefully they don't pass up the opportunity because the talent is one of the things that Army football players, especially, when I was going through, you always think that because you go to Army, then all the other players are bigger and better than you. But, it takes a couple of years of being in the NFL and, just like you said, going against the best all the time, just to realize that, there's not that much difference in talent, and that football equalizes everything because passion and perseverance and hard work and toughness is valued so much more than how fast you can run a 40 or how strong you are, when you're doing your bench press.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. Going back to your dad, I hope things turn around for him. I hope your family remains safe. And I'll definitely be in touch with you very soon. Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks so much, Mr. Grevious. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks.